Hello, everybody. Mackenzie here, and welcome back to yet another episode of Screenplays, brought to you by Cup of Hemlock Theatre. This week, we're breaking out our hammers and nails, our plywood, and we are building some fences as we talk about the titular play, Fences, from 2016, directed by Denzel Washington and starring Denzel Washington and Viola Davis as the leading couple. So, joining me on this panel, we have some returning faces. First off, we have the wonderful Sarah. Hello, welcome back, Sarah.
Hello, thanks for having me back again.
Yes, welcome, welcome. We're not talking about the Crucible this time.
I know. I almost started thinking about witchcraft. I was like, wait, no, we are on to a different topic today.
Different topic today, different topic. So, wonderful, wonderful. What's in your cup tonight?
Oh yeah, so I do have some herbal tea today, which I can't really say is super thematic, but more just it's sort of cozy and nice, which I think is helpful because this movie made me sad. So
Fair.
something
Fair
cozy
enough.
is fine.
And plus, also, we're in the middle of a rain and snowstorm again. So, April showers, I guess.
Exactly.
Hopefully, they're bringing those Mayflowers. So, there we go. And of course, joining us all the way from Denmark, it is the wonderful Andrew Pawarroo. Hello, Andrew.
Hello, I've returned. I've returned alive, which
Yes,
is
you have. Yes,
a
you have.
double
You returned alive
success,
from
I
Denmark.
think. Yeah. Yeah.
Heads.
Heads. Yeah. It's going to be a running gag between me and Ryan from this point forward.
Yep. Yep. And for you who don't know what we're referencing, we are referencing Ryan and Andrew's latest venture into the world of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. So Andrew went on that journey and back. He survived, unlike Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. And Andrew, what are you drinking tonight? How are you doing? What's in your cup?
Doing well, drinking some Cottage Springs, not sponsored,
Ooh.
vodka soda, blood orange flavor.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Trying to get into that summery mode already.
We're in like third winter now, I think they call it. And oh boy, am I. Yep.
And then, of course, joining us again, who hasn't been on since a little while now. It's been since, I think the Stratford reviews, but and she also did our wonderful Man of Destiny a staged reading as well. It is the wonderful Tanisha Sinclair. Hello, Tanisha.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me. It is great to be back.
Yes.
It's been a while. It's been a hot minute.
It's been a hot minute, but you've been busy. You've been doing a lot of shows and school, so you've been busy working in Toronto.
Yes. Just did my own show recently that I wrote with a bunch of people and put up in Toronto. Yep. So that has been a little bit of a busy time, but it was so fun.
Yeah.
And now it's nice to take some time to sort of do some consuming of media, read a play, watch a movie. So yeah.
Very fitting, very fitting. And that's the show you did over at Red Sandcastle Theatre, right?
Yes, yeah, hair care. It was really fun.
Yes. Love it. Well, hopefully it gets remounted again, because it came right during the holidays, and I was like, oh, I want to see it, but family.
It was our first iteration. It was us getting it on its feet, because yes, we're hoping to remount on a bigger stage.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, hopefully this summer, maybe Fringe.
Exactly,
that'd be a great spot for it. Exactly. Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, there we go. But let's get into this piece. Oh, and I also should say I am drinking some Crystal Light as per the usual. So I have my Crystal Light that I am drinking, a little bit of water mixed with a little bit of something else, all that good stuff. But let's get into this piece. This, I would say, highly underrated piece from 2016. When I look back on the 2016 film year, I'm like, how the heck did it not get more love and attention? I mean, Viola Davis rightfully won her Oscar, but in fact, Denzel got so meanly shut out of so much. It's like, he deserved more. I mean, honestly, that man did a terrific job on this film, and we're going to talk about it in this. So let's first just get into our general thoughts and impressions about the film. Would we recommend it to other people who have not seen this film before? Because it is a heavy film. Not everybody likes to, seek out heavy material on a Friday night, and this is a heavy play. I mean, I was talking with one of our friends of the Cup, Arlene Duncan, and she was saying, she is a BIPOC woman herself, and she goes, I've not really read it. I haven't really seen it. I haven't really had a chance to perform it. It's not one of those plays that I'm always actively singing because it is such a heavy, sad piece to kind of talk about. So she goes, it's one of those things where you have to be in the right mindset to talk about it. And I'm like, fair. Hence why, this was like, I hadn't watched this since 2016 until we were like, we haven't done Fences. We should do Fences at some point because we've done a lot of Crucible and a lot of Shakespeare stuff. And it was like, we did Denzel's Mackers. It was like, well, let's do his other kind of big play film, and which is Fences. So that's how that came to be. But Andrew, what are your thoughts on Fences?
I'm glad you came to me first off of that. Not everybody seeks out a serious movie on a Friday night. I definitely fall into that category. I'm not the guy that's going like, let's watch an Oscar film that's probably going to make me feel many things. So I appreciate the opportunity to quote unquote force me to watch one of these. And I'm grateful for it because this was probably a movie I wouldn't have watched, but it definitely succeeded in making me kind of lean back and go, oh, that's interesting. Oh, I like that. I feel things about it, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Certainly on the heavier side, and for what I watch, a slower burn, not necessarily in like a psychological thriller kind of way, just a slower burn to get to that kind of, oh, this is what this movie's about. Definitely a journey, and one that is going to be quite an experience for somebody who hasn't seen anything or heard anything about Fences at all. I would definitely recommend it, especially to someone who's just kind of looking to see what storytelling can do and what storytelling can be, if not in just movies, but in plays or in any medium. It's certainly something I appreciate kind of seeing for that reason. It's like, storytelling doesn't always have to be fast-paced action. It could be just about people existing and what happens. So,
right. And then, so Tanisha, what are your overall thoughts and general impressions about this film? Is it one that you would recommend?
Thoughts and general impressions. I may be a little bit biased because I loved the film. I also loved the play and think that the film is a great adaptation of the play, especially if you're someone who wants to, read it first or even after. It's a really good enhancement of it, just like if you were to watch it in theater. If it's not showing in your city, definitely would recommend the play. Might give it with a caveat, warning, it does delve into some heavy topics. It's not a feel good movie or story, but I definitely think it's an important one because it still relates to things that happen today, relationships that Black men have with their fathers and the dreams that they have for their life. So definitely an important story, beautifully told, even though it's heartbreaking in moments. I mean, Denzel Washington, if he's there, I'm there. Always.
Yes. Always. Always, always, always. I love that. Sarah, what are your thoughts? Did you know about this film? Did you do it during the Oscar research in 2016 to get ready for the Academy Awards?
I did know about it at the time, and it's funny that you had brought up it being heavy because I too had sort of avoided it at the time because I was worried about just knowing it was going to break my heart. And I do also sometimes avoid the things that I know are just going to make me so sad. So I hadn't seen it, although I always had intended to. I think I just sort of put it off a bit and then missed it. And then when we were going to do the panel, I looked up, I was like, oh, it was just a couple of years ago. Oh, is that? Yeah. Oh, okay. And I looked up and it was 2016 and I couldn't believe it kind of feels like yesterday. So I too was very grateful for the opportunity to see it because I really loved it. And really, Tanisha took a lot of the words out of my mouth, but I would definitely recommend it. For the acting alone, it truly is a masterclass. Just for the Viola Davis and Denzel Washington alone, I'd be like, this is a must watch. But I agree, Tanisha, that they did a really good job of the adaptation. And I think I've seen plays that are turned into films that I don't think make very good films, or they didn't do a great job of the adaptation. Some of them we've discussed on this podcast.
Look at you, Daniel Day-Lewis.
yeah, exactly. But this one, I think it works so well. as a film too. And I actually had also made some notes about how I feel like the themes are really timeless. And so even though it's set in this certain time period, I actually feel like it's something that will probably always continue to feel relevant. And I was sort of thinking about the fact that I actually watched it with my husband, and he is a very creative person, but not an artist. So he did not know about this play, that it was a play originally. And he actually walked away from it. And I, of course, had given him a bit of context and said, okay, well, this is a play that was turned into a film. And he actually said afterwards, wow, like I'm really loving these films that are based on plays. Like I love how it was really in kind of one location, and it was all about the characters and the relationships and the dialogue. And I felt like that was a really like it was really cool to see someone who didn't have the context of, this is a play originally, and what does that mean, still came to the same conclusion that there was something really special about this, and that really was unique and powerful on film. So I thought that was sort of another good endorsement of how powerful the film is. So yeah, I would definitely recommend.
Okay. Love that. I mean, for me, when I watched this, the first thing in my notes is this is the anti-doubt film adaptation of a play. Where if you've seen any of our other conversations in our past couple episodes about doubt, one of the things Ryan and I have often talked about is how when John Patrick Shanley adapted his own work, Doubt, for film with Meryl Streep and Philip Seymour Hoffman and Amy Adams, he notably took the play, which is only 4 characters, the Viola Davis mother character, speaking of Viola Davis, and you have Meryl Streep, Philip Seymour Hoffman, and Amy Adams would have been the 4 characters. But in the film, he made it so you see all the other nuns, the other priests, the students, the school. You actually see more of the incidents that Sister James talks about seeing. We never get to see in the play. And this is a play that you also could have fallen into that trap about, where it's like, we could have seen what's her name at the bar that Troy is flirting with and ultimately has the affair with. We could have seen Corey, the son, in the football coach, doing his thing, or the grocer at the IGA, and Troy finding out that Corey hasn't been working at the grocer, or Troy going down and talking to the football coach. You could have added more scenes in to fill in these moments that are talked about, because oftentimes in film it's the whole adage of show don't tell. But in this, the fact that as I should have said at the beginning, August Wilson, who wrote the play, also adapted this for film and got the nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay for that as well. And so, and actually he was posthumously nominated because he had passed away prior to the Oscars. But that being said, so like he could have done that where he added more scenes in and kind of overstuffed the piece. But I applaud him for really keeping it focused in on Troy and Rose and the family, and really not to do a lot of wordplay, but he really did keep the play fenced in, so you didn't get the outside world. So it's the fact that you actually are literally keeping the story insulated and boxed in, so you are only capturing snapshot moments, and all the stuff that goes on outside of their immediate bubble, like Troy after work, is the unseen stuff, is the stuff that we don't get to see, like Troy going to the hospital to pick up his daughter. We don't get any of those scenes at all. So I do appreciate the fact that they really did stay true to that bit of film work or play work, and not fall into the trap of overdoing it because, we're on film now, we can add more scenes, we can fill out the story and do more with it. It's like, no. He was like, no, it's not needed. He knew exactly what was needed to make this work. And so I applaud both August Wilson, who wrote the screenplay, then also Denzel as the director, for knowing that as well. Having done the play on Broadway with Viola Davis, they know the piece well enough to go, no, we don't need to add fat in into this story. The whole point is they don't always know what's going on outside their own fenced in area. So when you do find stuff out, it's like, oh, didn't see that coming. So there we go. So I know overall though, I really enjoyed it. I mean, I went back and looked at this year at the Oscars. I mean, Moonlight won for Best Picture because this was the infamous year of the La La Land Moonlight mix-up.
Oh my goodness.
And I do like Moonlight, but if it's my choice of Moonlight or Fences, I would have gone with Fences because I don't know. I don't know. This film just spoke to me in a way that I just felt more for than I did with Moonlight. But even though Moonlight was a terrific film, I remember seeing that one in theaters and being blown away by that story as well. You know, we'll never get into the acting categories, but just looking at all the other films that year of, you have Moonlight, Arrival, Fences, Hacksaw Ridge, Hell or High Water, Hidden Figures, La La Land, Lion, and Manchester by the Sea. Like,
Wow.
it was it was a solid year for Oscar movies.
It was stacked for sure.
It was stacked. Like, Hidden Figures was another one I've gone back to several times and really enjoyed. So that's another one I wish got more love and attention because that's a beautiful story as well. Hacksaw Ridge, like I know Mel Gibson is, persona non grata in a lot of ways, but he did make a really good film that Andrew Garfield and Hugo Weaving, and I forget who else is in that movie, but did a really solid job telling that story of that soldier who saved us.
No, I was gonna say, and I even loved Denis Villeneuve's Arrival. Like
yes, with the aliens.
Yes,
so good.
It was a stacked year,
right? Well, the only one I was Manchester by the Sea. That's the only one, and I mean we'll get into that one more with Casey Affleck beating Denzel in a moment when we get into that question, but. Yeah, definitely some thoughts there now for sure, and even thoughts back then too. I was like, really? Because that's the one that actually put me to sleep was Manchester by the Sea. That's when I was like, oh, this is the Oscar slog movie. Even Lion with like Nicole Kidman, that beautiful adoption story. Like, there's a lot of good films this year. So,
and a lot of great acting. Like as you were reading out those I was thinking, oh, those are some killer acting performances. Yeah. Oh, so is that? Yeah. So I see, I guess, how some of these movies like Fences didn't get the attention that they deserved, maybe, but
it was a very well mixed year. So very, very good. But overall, I recommend it. I mean, unfortunately here in Canada, it's very hard to stream. You have to kind of go out, find the other ways to stream a movie these days. Because unfortunately, it's not on Netflix, it's not on Crave, it's not on Paramount Plus, it's not on trying to think of all the other ones.
Disney Plus.
Disney Plus is not on any of them.
And I just want to pay for it, which is like, yes, pay for movies, but it's been since 2016.
Yeah, come on.
It should be available for us now.
Right? Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I mean, we get into a whole other side conversation about streaming, but this is the thing where like I'm now happy more people are picking up on the fact that streaming is all good and well when the content is available. Hence why when Mac bought his digital copy during the Oscar season, I was like, thank goodness, because now I can go back and watch it anytime I want to watch it versus trying to hunt it down on places where you can't find it. So either way, streaming services, pick up this movie. It is worth being on there on your site. Pay for it. It is well worth the money. But let's get into Denzel and Viola, who were reprising their roles from the Broadway production where I believe they both won Tony Awards, or at least I know Viola Davis won the Tony Award that season when she did it on Broadway. So what do we think of their performances as our lead couple of Troy and Rose Max? Sarah, what do you think of them?
Oh, amazing. Just like from the first line, from the first scene, amazing. Of course, Viola Davis can do no wrong. Like I found her to be so funny and so lovable in her like straight shooter, personality, but also so heartbreaking, of course. Like she commits to a level of vulnerability in her performances that I don't think is matched by anyone. And it's why she is so incredible. So like just flawless. But I was really impressed by Denzel Washington in this role because I think the role is really challenging. I was 100%. Thinking that I've seen roles like this in plays and in movies where there's a real trap for the whole thing to be angry or the whole thing to be yelling. Like that kind of character can become really, really one note. And he brought such a massive amount of layers to the character. Like he was funny. He was charming. Like when he was lovable, when he was in a good mood, you loved this guy. And it made the film make sense because he has all these women who are falling for him. He's got friends who are standing by him in all these situations. Why does that happen? That only makes sense if we can see, like, when he is on, he's on. Like, you see why people gravitate to him. And the dialogue of that character is so challenging. Like, he just talks and talks and talks. And it's like kind of stream of consciousness from one thing to the next. And he can go from being so funny and so charming, and then switches on a dime to being so mean and so critical. And it's like, it happens so subtly and so quickly. And so what I found was, even though I actually like hated him as a character, it didn't make me want to stop watching it. Like, I think that's what amazed me, is that sometimes when you have a character like that, who's kind of maybe morally in that difficult area where you're like, I hate everything you're doing, it can make you not want to watch anymore, right? But because of the layers that he brought to it, like, you kept hoping he was going to do the right thing. You were kind of with him, and then you weren't, and then you were drawn in again. I thought, and that is so challenging. And honestly, it was a bit of a hard watch, because if you ever have known someone like that, who has that kind, like, and borderline, maybe a bit of alcoholism going on, like, if you've ever known that kind of person, like, that performance was so real. It was like, it was tough to watch. So both of them just perfectly cast. And again, like, the selling feature of the film for me, for sure.
Yeah. Tanisha, what do you think?
Yes, to all of that. It is truly a masterclass in acting. And I think both of them are amazing in their like ability to have this classical training where they can get up on stage and do this play and win Tonys, but they also have accolades in film as well. Like, we know that they're both incredible film actors. So then here they are able to do, like, translate this play into film acting and do it, like, do these characters justice. Like Sarah's saying, like, these are complex characters, just like we are as people. And they bring those layers, like, to the film. And like, the way that you have to do that on camera versus stage, it's so different, but the way that they know how to, like, translate it is amazing to watch. So amazing to watch. I wish I could compare it to their Broadway performance. I wish I had seen both. That would be amazing. But just watching them in this film, you're so captivated by them. I love how you said, Sarah, that Viola Davis brings a level of vulnerability that is kind of unmatched by anyone. And that is, like, so true. Like, you took the words right out of my mouth. So true. That's what makes her performances so, like, unique and dropped in. Like, the level of vulnerability, it kind of is scary, because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm uncomfortable. Like, this is heartbreaking. And on top of that, the joy that she finds, the joy that Viola Davis always finds in any character she does, like, no matter, like, how sad the role is or whatever the character's going through, there's always, like, a little something that she puts in there to make her lovable. And Denzel does the same thing with a lot of his roles, but especially with this one. I remember watching this and being like, this is going to be interesting to see how he does it, because the amount of dialogue, like you're saying, stream of consciousness, how do you keep that fresh? How do you keep, like, the thoughts coming, like, they're fresh and new thoughts, like you're just thinking it for the first time, to keep me as an audience member engaged, right? And he does it so flawlessly. And they're both so dropped in and with each other when they have their scenes with each other, just the two of them, or even with one other person. Oh, that's, we'll get into when we talk about the supporting roles, but the way that they will act with each other, you can feel that tension. Oh, I can feel the marital problems. I can feel the layers of all these characters blending with each other. You hate him right now. I hate him right now as an audience member. But I also, like, want you guys to work it out. I love, like, you were so on the edge of your seat, because you're like, oh my gosh, I feel for both of them. I am angry for you, and like, at Denzel. I am Oh my gosh. Sorry. There was a moment with Denzel and Gabe, and he has these goes through a few emotions, and just to see it on his face, the anger washes to sadness, washes to
Mhm.
confusion, and then hardens again. And I
Yeah.
was like, to see that happen on camera in like the span of like maybe 3 or 4 seconds
Mhm.
was beautiful. And I just loved it. I loved it.
Andrew, what do you want to say?
I
But
don't
you
know.
hated the whole performance, right? You're
Yeah,
thinking
I know, right? It's just like, well, I don't know what movie I was watching. Can you imagine I come outright and be like, yeah, I didn't really care about either Denzel Washington or Viola Davis's performance.
should have recast him.
Yeah, that would be wild. I don't know, however, that's not my opinion, but I don't know if there's much I can say on top of that because those were both such covered so well the
Mhm.
thoughts that I had about the movie, and certainly something that I didn't start out saying, but both of you had covered. If you're gonna watch this movie for one thing, it's definitely the acting. I find Denzel Washington and Viola Davis, one of the reasons I admire them both as actors and in this film
Mhm.
is because they have such an ability to be both natural and dynamic, which is something as for me as an actor I'm nervous about bringing to any role that I play, but they seem to do it so seamlessly, and they create real people, which is something
Mhm.
everybody who acts or is in kind of like an acting medium strives to do.
Mhm.
So it was so very cool to watch this film that I was like, oh, I know these actors. I'm not that I know what I'm gonna see, but these are familiar faces.
Yeah.
But then about
Mhm.
10 minutes into the movie, you forget who they are,
Mhm.
and all you can do is relate or empathize or
Mhm.
sympathize or get mad at their characters. So certainly something that I think was a real point, like that. I've lost the word that I was going to use,
Mhm.
but anyway, it's something that this movie really highlights. So I'm very glad that I got the opportunity to watch it and see both of those performances.
Very good. And so, Andrew, I will give you a question, but Tanisha and Sarah, you can jump in on this too. So, Viola Davis won for Best Supporting Actress. Should she have been put in the Best Actress category? Because sometimes film studios will play politic, and if they know that a certain category is, I don't want to say lighter, but less of a challenge, if they know that they got a kind of a hit run, like a home run performance like Viola gives, sometimes they'll be like, yeah, let's try and skirt her into supporting. Because in supporting, she's up against Naomi Harris in Moonlight, Nicole Kidman in Lion, Octavia Spencer, Hidden Figures, and Michelle Williams in Manchester by the Sea versus lead actress, which went to Emma Stone in La La Land, but she was up against Isabel Huppert for Elle, uh, Ruth Negga for Loving, Natalie Portman for Jackie, who I think should have won over Emma Stone, and Meryl Streep for Florence Foster Jenkins. So, do we think Viola should have been in supporting, or she won, or do we think she should have been bumped up into lead category? Andrews, I'll let you go first.
Ooh, oh no, I gotta play Oscar politics. Oh no. I'm just kind of trying to run through the film in my head and kind of see if
Mhm.
I can make that, because supporting at the very least, definitely, but can I make the
Yeah.
argument for lead?
Mhm.
Which I think is kind of an interesting question because it's almost you want to say for the performance that she gave and for how much people can admire both her acting and the character that she brought, that she could hold her own and lead. But
Right.
also interesting because you look at the movie and you go,
Yeah.
Denzel's character and the
Mhm.
amount of lines and the kind of story that we follow, can we say that in that movie, Viola Davis was like
Yeah.
they were sharing that lead role?
So
Um,
I'll help you a little bit. When she won the
yeah.
Tony on Broadway, she was in the
Mhm.
lead actress category. She was not
Okay.
in supporting.
Okay.
If that
I don't
sways
know.
you at all into
It
being
does not
on
help
where to
me.
put her.
It does not help me. It complicates it because I personally want to say, oh no, yeah, I'm probably gonna get hate in the comments for this. And you know what? Hate me in the comments. Write a
Yeah.
comment if you disagree, and just roast me there. That was supposed to happen. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead too, so feel free. Um, I am going to say I think supporting is where I personally
Okay.
would have put Viola Davis, and that I hope and shouldn't be in any way to like slight the performance that she gave. I
No,
think
no.
it's just the role and nothing else, I would say. I'm going to leave
Tanisha?
it at that.
Well, if we're gonna play Oscar politics, what should have happened is that
Oh,
we should have put her up for lead, so she could have won, and then Octavia Spencer could have won supporting, and we could have had two Black women winning Oscar as it
oh,
should have been. Because
True.
first of all, this is a lead role. Like
Yes.
they are in this together. It is their
Yeah.
like this is in my mind, no doubt, that's two lead roles. And if
Mhm.
she was in lead, like she would have won against Emma Stone. Like no, hands down, no question. And then Octavia Spencer would have won supporting, and
Yeah.
I would have been the happiest gal around. But of course, that is not the world we live in. That is it makes so much sense why they did it, why they were like, let's put her in supporting so she wins, and then
Mhm.
we can give lead to someone else.
Yeah.
We've seen this happen time and time again.
Oh yeah, no, it's
I
a
knew
very
this was
common for Oscar
right
practice. They will bump people around if they
now.
can.
Yeah. And that's my
Yeah.
thoughts on that.
Okay. Sarah?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think like I would have had no problem if she was put in the best act, like the lead category. I wouldn't have thought twice about it. Like I agree that the role is substantial enough that it does feel qualified, particularly because when I think about a couple of the performances in the supporting category, not all of them, because some of them
Yeah.
were bigger than others, but the ones that just stood out to me in the list, Naomi Harris for Moonlight was
Yep.
what it was, from what I remember, is a pretty small role.
It's
Like
a
she's
small
kind
role.
of,
Like I think she plays the
it,
mom to the
yeah, and
little
she's,
boy. So
there's like
yeah.
a couple scenes, like it's, and the
Yes.
same is true for even, oh my goodness, Lion. What is the name I'm trying to think of?
Nicole Kidman playing the
no.
mom.
Thank you, Nicole Kidman.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
actually,
playing the mom.
I really remember that performance because I remember thinking, wow, that was a really small part for Nicole Kidman. But that one main scene she had stuck with me forever. Like she
Yep.
was so good in that
Mhm.
one scene. It was like, wow, if you have to get an Oscar nomination with one scene, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about like roles like that had maybe one or two scenes that were really powerful, Viola Davis's performance feels so much larger than what was required in a couple of those performances.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel totally even for her to
Mhm.
be with those types of like the sort of ensemble roles. It doesn't totally add up with what she did in this movie. So yeah, if that makes sense. So I do,
Yeah.
I can see it argued both ways, but definitely would not have batted an eye if she was in the lead role. That would have felt right. So
yeah. I mean, to wrap up this whole section, I mean, I will fourth the comment that these two were terrific in their performances because they were. I mean, once again, there's a reason why they did the Broadway revival and then that spurred on a film adaptation after that because, that was a very iconic Broadway revival that was done. And then they got to bring those performances to the screen. And once again, when you have two high caliber actors like Viola Davis and Denzel, you are obviously going to get world-class performances no matter what, but that just makes it even better that they not only met with what I was expecting, but exceeded it to such an extent. Because I think that's something we can sometimes, as audiences, forget. Same thing with the Steven Spielberg is, we all know they're good. So it's like, okay, great. Yes, you're good. Just like Meryl Streep. Everybody goes, oh, it's Meryl Streep. It's like, yeah, but we didn't ever underappreciate the craft that goes into them going, that's Meryl Streep, or that's Spielberg, or that's Viola Davis, or that's Denzel, because the work they put in to making it seem like so flawlessly easy for them to reach those levels should never be underestimated. And, that's why I think that could be the only reason why Denzel did not get the best actor that year against Casey Affleck, because everybody knows Denzel is Denzel. Like, it's like Meryl Streep. It's Meryl Streep. But it's like, no, he should have won for this because this is a tour de force performance over Casey Affleck in that awful Manchester by the Sea, which, and I mean, finding out stuff about Casey Affleck afterwards makes it just sting that much more that he got this award. because it's like, really, this is who we gave it to. Ugh. Like, yeah, no, but he should have won. And I also will say Viola Davis should have won an Oscar well before Fences. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just saying her performance in Doubt
Yeah.
alone, that one
Yeah.
scene where she comes in as the mother and basically says, "Let the priest have my son. It's only till June," was a tour de force performance alone. And that is a true supporting role performance where she is in one scene and hits it out of the park in that one moment, compared to what her performance in this, where I am with Tanisha and Sarah on this one. Sorry, Andrew. But I will say, I think she should have been up in the lead and she could have beat Emma Stone. Maybe would have given Natalie Portman a run for her money as Jackie, because that was a solid performance as Jackie Kennedy. I mean, the film itself was not well edited and was all over the place. It did a stream of consciousness film, which I didn't like. I was like, just tell me the story of Jackie Kennedy post-assassination. I don't need this flash forward, flashback nonsense that we got going on. But Natalie Portman was great in that movie. I think she was the only one who could have given Viola Davis a run for her money, but I still would have given it to Viola Davis because she was well, she had done enough in her career to be like, we like, she needs to win this because she deserves to win it, but also because how have we not rewarded her work yet? So overall, Viola Davis, Denzel, you were terrific. But they were not the only ones in this cast, because as you can see behind me, we have a wonderful supporting cast around us of actors. And so let's get into them. Tanisha, who stood out to you in the supporting cast?
Mykelti Williamson, who did Gabe. I thought he was amazing. I've seen him in quite a few things, but in this role specifically, his commitment to the characterization of Gabe, I thought he was perfectly casted, like, for the role. His, like, physicality, like his physical characterization, it's what really, like, sold it. And there was just so many moments where you can see, like, one thought bringing him to the next, like bringing him to the next action. And especially, like, with all of that, like, this character has been through, having the plate in his head, and now, like, you know, suffering a bit through mental illness. They don't really get into, like, what it is specific in the play or in the film even, but you just, you know, that is taking a toll on this character specifically, and he does a great job of showing us that.
Yeah.
Like, and bringing the humanity to this character. Like, it's not this character's not a joke. Like, this is a real, like, beautiful person. Oh my gosh. And he just stood out to me so beautifully. The scene where Denzel's like, I got someone pregnant, and he's just there like, I got a rose for you. And I thought he, like, really, because sometimes when you have two tour de forces in the room, they can suck out all the air. They can really, like, stand out, but he held his ground as a character and really, like, made that scene like what it is. I loved it. Like, it was three of them together. So he definitely was my standout.
Yeah. Love that. Love that. Andrew?
I don't have a good reason for the person that I would have picked as my
Taking the fence,
standout
everyone.
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
Solid fence.
Tell me there's a more important person in this than the fence. Crazy. Yeah, roast me in the comments for that one. I'm going to, like, it's really hard, admittedly, to pick out one single supporting cast member or I'll say ensemble cast member. We'll see what happens. That's kind of stuck out to me because everybody really brought their A game for this film and really supported just everything that this film had going for it. But I am going to say Russell Hornsby. Thank goodness. Thank goodness someone agrees. Also very good. Because he had this one scene where Denzel is kind of Troy is criticizing his son for asking him for money and the reasonings behind that. And for some reason, that monologue just stuck with me the entire movie. I think there's something to be said about just the, like, being able to stand and deliver and commit and have an impact on your audience. And I think that's what Russell Hornsby did for me. And it also helps that I watched him in, I think, was it Grimm? Yes, Grimm. Sorry, the TV show. So I'm incredibly biased. I'm like, oh, I know him. So yes, I'm going to go with Russell Hornsby for just the lasting effect he had on me for that one monologue. Yeah.
Wonderful. Sarah?
This is so funny. You two picked the two people that I was going to shout out. I completely agree with everything you both said about both of them. I also, Russell Hornsby's performance, I was also thinking like that, he really struck me. And what was it about it? I think it was just so authentic. It wasn't a showy role. It wasn't, but it was subtle, but it was so truthful. And I think it was partially too the way he navigated the relationship and the dynamic with his father, both as an actor and as a character. Like Denzel Washington is a tour de force. The character kind of has that like takes up a room quality, and just the subtle ways he kind of had to manage, like how does he navigate this very difficult person? And it was like, he doesn't even necessarily get really upset. It's like he just knows how his dad is, and he navigates it as best he can. And there was just something so subtle and so truthful in the way that he did that. I also thought it was really powerful, and I felt the same about Uncle Gabe. Like that is a role that could easily become too caricature like or overdone, so that it doesn't feel truthful, or maybe it feels kind of, I don't know, problematic in the way that it could be performed. But it was just done with such subtlety and truthfulness, and it felt like a real, like you said, Tanisha, like a real human being who's gone through this really terrible thing, but is also so lovely. And so I honestly, they talk sometimes about maybe adding an ensemble category to the Oscars. And this was a film that actually made me think, this is why they need to add that category in. Because this film, of course, is what it is because of our two leads. But actually, part of what makes it so good is that every single person in it is fantastic. The whole ensemble meshes so well and is so powerful. And it creates this believable, fascinating world. Like, it really draws you in.
Yeah. I mean, there is one person who we have not mentioned, so I'm happy of that, because that is my person. Because overall, this cast was just terrific. I mean, as Sarah said, like, this ensemble just worked so well together, and we're all just so wonderfully linked that it actually did make me want to see more scenes of Corey and Gabe's life outside the fenced-in house. But at the same time, I get why August Wilson did not do that. But at the same time, their performances were so compelling that I was like, oh, I wish I had more. But the person who I want to give a stand out to is Stephen McKinley Henderson as Jim Bono, who is right behind me. There he is. And he's just one of those wonderful character actors who it's like, I know that guy, but you don't know his name. He's just always one of these great character actors that just shows up in so many different things on Broadway, on film and television, and just so lovable. I mean, every time he was on screen, you felt the love that he brought into this family. He felt like everybody's favorite uncle who shows up and is just that guy at work that you work with, is just always there with you. And he just had so much to him that I'm like, could we just do a spin-off play about Jim and his family and his life? Because like, just the way he carried himself was like, this is a man who has gone through life. just like Troy has. In fact, we have that great scene where they're talking about their fathers and the generational trauma that's come down through each generation. And he talks a bit about it. And it's like, oh yeah, no, like you're a full character too. We just don't get to see a ton of you because you walk off stage, go to your own house with your own wife, and you have your own adventures off stage that I would have loved to have been seen, just because he just gives such a charismatically beautiful performance that you can see why Rose welcomed him into the house all the time, and why Troy and him have such a strong partnership together on the garbage truck. Like, they are just there in the trenches, working hard, making their livings, and are just going. And I mean, and the whole thing about betting on when they're going to get the fence done and paying the bet, and then also the fact he's always there, being like, Troy, I see you with what's her name at the bar. I forget the character's name. The person's name. Yeah, the other one. But it's like but he sees that and he's like, like, he's always there keeping an eye on Troy. So it's one of those things where like he just gave such a Alberta. Thank you, Alberta. Thank you, Andrew. And how Canadian?
I know, and we forgot it.
Yeah, right.
Alberta, but she's from Florida.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I mean, I never thought of actually naming somebody Alberta, but I'm like, okay, I could see that. You could have somebody Alberta. You know, Al short for a guy. You know, you could do Ali for a girl. I don't know. There's something there. Or Bert. You could do Bert for a guy.
Oh, Bert.
Birdie.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah, Birdie. Yeah, there you go. For full name Alberta, short Birdie. There you go.
That's
Who knows?
I like Birdie.
There you go. Okay. But either way, so yes, Jim sees Alberta and Troy at the bar, and he is clocking that, and he's the one that's planting this seed of the ever foreboding danger of this off-screen relationship, and he's just always there, and you know his friend dies, right? I mean, Troy dies. Spoiler alert, for those who haven't seen it, but you know he's there at the funeral, and you can tell he's missing his friend. Because he even says to Corey, going like, you know, I know your father was an asshole to you, and you know you guys did not have a good relationship, but he still was a human being who deserves respect, even if you don't give him love the way a father and son usually would have love for each other. He was still someone who put a roof over your head, who he acknowledges the complicated relationship, but he also goes, he was my friend too. You know, so there's a beautiful relationship there that I just really loved. And so, Steven, you get a shout out. And I don't know if he did Broadway. I don't know if he did the.
I was just
he
gonna
did.
ask,
He did.
was he?
He did.
Oh,
He actually
Nice.
did do Broadway, and it was Tony nominated for his performance, but didn't win.
Oh.
Unfortunately. Of course, come on, everybody. Steven needs some love. Like he's one of
Yeah.
these great working actors.
Yeah.
And he's still alive, 74 years old. And he actually was just in Beau is Afraid
Hell
in 2023.
Oh.
So there you go. But he is wonderful. So there we are. All right. Next question is, what was our favorite production or design element of the film? Sarah, I'll let you start this one.
Sure. Yeah, there was a couple of elements that I really loved. My favorite thing was really the set and production design.
Yeah.
For two sort of reasons. One is it just felt so real. Like the level of detail. I'm even looking in that picture behind you, just like the details of the stuff that they have lying around in the yard. It just felt like an actual home. And I know most of the time you watch a movie, it feels very real, but something about this one felt especially like a special detail and care was taken to make this feel like an actual home that people live in. And it mattered because so much of the story is in the house and in the yard. It didn't feel like this is on a sound stage that they've sort of set up to look like
right.
It. I don't know. It just feels dirty. Like your backyard actually is. I don't know. Something about it just felt really well done. And I really kind of similar to what you were saying, Mac, at the beginning. I loved that. Yes, there was like a couple scenes here and there where they went outside of the house itself. They were at Troy's work at one point and they were on the garbage truck, of course, at the beginning.
Yeah.
But most of the movie still took place in the home, either inside or in the yard. And I was so glad that they did that because I think it's so important to the intimacy of the story. And when so much of the play or the film, is about the relationships, it felt important. That is what was let to shine rather than it being like adding in all these other locations. And again, one of the themes is about how the characters are trapped, I think, in their lives or in situations. So keeping it close in the yard, in the home, and it feeling so like a real functioning kitchen, like a real yard that people are working in every day really felt right. And then I just also wanted to give a little shout out to the actual direction and the filming of it as well, because I noticed I really liked that sometimes when a character was going into sort of a longer speech or monologue, there'd be sort of these long camera shots that just stayed with the person, which totally allowed you to just be like right there with them and just brought into the train of thought or the thing that they were, what they were reminiscing about. And then there was a few things that felt sort of theatrical. Like there's one shot where there's 4 or 5 of them talking in the yard and you got like a nice wide frame shot of all of them.
Yeah.
And it made you feel like you proscenium shot, exactly. And it's like, again, if the play, it is about relationships, and I'm actually physically seeing the relationships in the frame. So I felt like both the production and set design and then the way it was filmed really highlighted the themes that we're seeing in the story itself. So those would be my shout outs.
Love that. Love that. Andrew?
I'm coming at this from a perspective of I'm copying Sarah's homework, but I'm changing it a little so that no one else. But it's really interesting because those are the two things that really struck me about this movie was the set and was the camera work. Because I agree, the set definitely was just kind of brought you into the world. And it was, and I think the thing that I liked both about the set and the camera together is that it felt cozy and it felt like a play. It felt really confined in the, not in a bad way, but in a sense of like, you can tell that this is where the story is. And it really brought you into their homes and felt like we were looking through like a theatrical fourth wall. Like we just kind of cut the house in half and just like we're seeing that.
Right.
So yes, definitely the realism and the kind of close quarters of the set I really wanted to give a shout out to, but also yes, camera work. And again, I'm totally copying Sarah because I was like, because I really appreciate when a camera stays on an actor and doesn't move. And once again, same thing with the Russell Hornsby monologue is like, that's what stuck with me is that they were like, we're going to let Russell Hornsby do what Russell Hornsby is trained to do. We're not going to do any fancy cutting or editing or sound. We're just going to we're just slightly going to zoom in and just let the actor be an actor, which is something that I really appreciate and thought that it was kind of a nice, kind of a nod to the fact that this is a play. You don't get that on stage. You don't get cuts. You don't get to see a switch to a different set. You just see the actor doing what the actor does. So for the sake of that, knowing it's a play and just as a personal appreciation, I definitely have to give a shout out to the camera work. Yeah, so those are my two things. I'm just gonna sign that. Andrew, slightly different-handed into teacher.
Love that. Love that. Tanisha, what stood out to you?
Yes. I mean, this is a great piggyback off of this because I also chose a cinematography. I think Charlotte Burns, who did the cinematography for this, she did a great job because like collaborating with Denzel as like a director and an actor. I was just so interested by it. I did some research and I was reading an interview that she did talking about doing like Girl on the Train with Emily Blunt and then doing this movie this year. And it was like, she did one and then she did the other and they're so different because the vibe alone is different and how she works like on films is different. For this one, there was no like shot list. Denzel's like, you don't need a shot list. You don't know where I'm gonna be. Like you want me to have that, you know what I mean? Like he's like, you want me to be an actor and like roam. And I loved like what you said about it being like very theatrical in that sense, like in a play side theatrical, Alex, because that's exactly what it did. It allowed the actors to bring us through the story instead of having like the cinematography be another element that brings you, the audience member, through the story. It was really just the acting and the relationships that we saw and the story unfolding through these, like the actors. And she also said like, moving the camera in any of the scenes was a very, very important thing because they didn't do it often. Even the scene with Viola Davis, like the monologue, they put it on a track so it could follow her. But that was after like knowing, like giving the actor free reign, like giving her a rehearsal. Like, okay, so where are the emotions taking you? Because that's how I would approach like directing a play. Like I'm gonna give you maybe a few blocking notes, but at first I want to see where this emotion takes you as an actor. So you kind of have free roam of the stage, and then okay, let me follow you with my camera afterwards. Like after you know where the scene wants. Where you want to go with this scene. And I just thought that was really well done as a cinematographer because it wasn't just like, this is kind of what I'm bringing to it. This is what I want to bring to it. Let me collaborate with you as a director. Or let me collaborate with you also as an actor. Like, what do you want me to show emotionally? And it was done on film too, which gave us that little old style, like it gave us the time, you know what I mean? Because this is set not in today, it's set way back. So that really helped to bring us into that intimacy of it.
Yeah.
And it stuck with me. I was great production element.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. I mean, I will fourth everything and just say David Grotman's production design with the house was so beautiful because everything worked in that house. And this is one of those production designs where, I looked up what else was nominated that season for production design, and you had La La Land, Arrival, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, Hail Caesar, and Passengers were the films that all were nominated. It's like, okay, I get it. 2 musicals, like you got Hail Caesar, La La Land are both kind of musical, old Hollywood. So you're gonna go big on that. Arrival, I get it. It's the aliens. It's very atmospheric. Fantastic Beasts, okay, all right. Well, it was a great movie, but I get it. Magic wizards. You're designing a whole new world. Passengers, spaceship. The flashier stuff kind of got the production design award, but I would have nominated this. Like I would have taken out Fantastic Beasts and put this in the spot. So like this production design is one of those things of it's so I don't want to say it's easy to make the flashy work because it's not. It takes a lot of work to create a big musical set or create the New York Ministry of Magic. Like those worlds are very hard to conceptualize because it's never existed before. But at the same time, a house like this that has to be such a unspoken character is this house that Troy feels so much guilt over because he gets it from his brother's medical money from the bad plate they put in his head, the government money that he got, like he gets the money from there and he feels the guilt of that. And that's something that keeps getting brought up is I couldn't afford my own house. I had to use my brother's own money to get the house over my head to pay for it. And then, of course, you have the set piece of the fence itself being built and being like such a big thing is something that it's like, these characters, like these unspoken fixtures of this world are so important to informing everything else that goes on in this play is so essential. But I also will say, because we've had a lot of conversation about the house, but I'll say Denzel's direction alone was really well done. I mean, one moment that I just loved was when you get to after he's died and they're in the backyard and Gabe's blowing his horn. And before the third blow, the fence gate closes and shuts. And just that little detail shows Denzel's attention to detail of it's in the back. Like obviously you have to be watching in the background to see it happen, but that doesn't happen just by chance in a scene. There is a deliberate thing of Troy's spirit locking these people into his fence even after death is there. Just those details are just, the way he decided to film and conceptualize the scene with the devil in the baseball bat. That could be such a hokey scene, but it was done in such a way that was beautiful. Just him swinging at the world basically around him was just so well done. I mean, it's one thing to have to play Troy, but then also having to direct this piece. That's a tough balancing act to do. Like that is not an easy feat. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he did not get nominated. Denis Villeneuve won or was nominated for Arrival, and I saw the DE and I was like, oh, Denzel, no.
Okay,
So either way, so then it's either Barry Jenkins for Moonlight, Kenneth Lofgren for Manchester by the Sea, Mel Gibson for Hacksaw Ridge, Denis Villeneuve for Arrival, or Damien Chazelle for La La Land. I would have taken a Manchester by the Sea. Put Denzel in there. I mean, once again, Manchester by the Sea was just such an Oscar play film that I have no problem saying that film was overrated, because it was. That film was way overrated, and Denzel should have gotten more love and attention for that because, as I said, balancing performing and directing a piece like this is hard.
I would like
So,
to echo that because
yeah,
often when I see things that someone directed themselves in and they
yeah,
starred in it and directed it, I
yeah,
often think to myself, that was a mistake.
yeah,
Because you needed some, like 9 times out of 10, I'm like, someone else needed to direct that. Like that was too
yeah,
self-indulgent and the
yes,
movie lost something because it didn't
yeah,
have an outside eye.
yeah,
This one, that was not the case.
yeah,
Like the direction and the performance were fantastic. Neither
yeah,
suffered because there was only one vision there. Like that's really impressive.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So shout out to Denzel, and he should have been nominated and should have won for best direction. But
Mhm.
let's get into our next piece, which is based on our familiarity with August Wilson's original play. How would we appraise this film as an adaptation? Or if we've never encountered the original play, does this film make us want to read or see a production of it? Tanisha, I'll let you start this one.
Okay. Well, yes, I've read the play a couple times, like once back in uni and recently before this panel. And I loved this play. It's so I don't like intimate, like
Mhm,
as plays like can be. I've read some that actually are pretty like greatest, but no, this one just feels so intimate. And I remember seeing the performance, like watching the movie after and thinking this is a great adaptation because they didn't change the script. Like it was
yeah,
like you watched the theater production of it because the script is the same and it's just
mhm,
the actors like using it. So if you're going to read the play, like I was saying earlier, if you're going to read it before or after, it either way, the movie just enhances it. And I
right.
think Denzel did a great job of adapting it because they use the script as a guide. Like we are
Mhm,
truthfully going to stay to it, and even the set, yeah, because as a director, he got to make these choices and be like, this is how August wants us to adapt it. We're not
mhm,
going with all these additives. We could have seen all these other scenes to fill out this world, but we didn't need it.
yeah,
And they truly just use, yeah, this script, that's it, as the guide. Let's dive into what the play's actually about and just show that on screen.
mhm,
It's about relationships. It's about how like not even just relationships with each other, but like his relationship to the world, like he was fighting the world and
mhm,
how he has let his dreams die. Like he doesn't allow himself to dream a full dream. And so no one else can.
mhm,
And just lets the text speak for itself and the
yeah,
actors do the acting. And I
mhm,
love that. That's why this film feels like a slow burn. It feels intimate because it is, and it is a
yeah,
theater adaptation in
mhm,
form, and it's done wonderfully. I think people should read it and see it, in my
yeah,
opinion.
yeah. Love that. Love that. Andrew?
I have not read the original play, so I'm coming at it from certainly the perspective of like, does this film make me want to watch and or read the stage version?
Mhm,
Um, and absolutely, especially hearing how loyal the movie is to the original script and how much I can kind of tell that it tried to stay I use the term loyal already, but stay loyal to the idea that this is a play. It does make me want to see where they got their source material from and then see
mhm,
what the experience of it is like on stage. Cause I'm almost expecting it to be very similar. And for that reason, I want to go see it. Will I be? Do I think it's exactly the same? Absolutely not. I don't think a filmed version of a stage anything will give me the same thing. But for how close it tried to be in terms of like this is the play source material and this is the movie
mhm,
that we presented from it, I think it makes me want to seek out what it came from. This kind of does for me what I don't think Amadeus, which was a panel I was on a while ago, would do
You
for
had a
me
few
because
Amadeus experiences.
yes, I've had a couple now, which is great. But like knowing like that is kind of like the other side of
Mhm,
what a movie adaptation from a play is like, having seen both versions, you kind of go, if I saw the movie, I'm not sure I want to see the play because it's so different and it presents a different thing and a different view and gives me something else. This I don't get that from, and I'm so glad that you're all like, yeah, this is very loyal to the source material. So yeah, for that reason, it does make me want to see a live production of this.
Love that. Sarah?
Yeah, I agree with what both of you are saying. I also have not read it or seen it staged, and it did make me want to pull out the text and actually look at the source material. I think the dialogue is such a beast in this piece. So, and one thing, I didn't say this earlier, but one thing that I always notice in Denzel Washington's performances is he has like a uncanny ability to make text sound like it's his own thoughts. Like you mentioned his Mackers with Frances McDormand as well. And I didn't love that film, truthfully, but the one thing I took away from it was like, oh my gosh, like he talks, and whether it's Shakespeare, whether it's August Wilson's giant monologues, whatever he says, it feels like he thought of it for the first time right now, and it's his own thoughts. Like it's a really unique skill he has, and it did make me want to pick up the text and actually like, what does it look like? How is it? And just trying to picture, how do you break that down and bring it to life in a way that is so natural? It does make me want to look at it. It also made me want to read this one specific moment. And it was the moment you just mentioned, when with the like talking to the devil with the baseball bat. There was like, that was like the only one part of the film that left me with like a little question mark. And I kind of wanted to go and read the script and just see what does it say happens there. Because there was this sort of repetitive thing where he kept looking to the neighbor. There's like a neighbor's house has a broken window on the upper floor, and like a couple different times he kind of looked at it, and then he did it right at that moment. He like looked at that window, and then things got a little hazy in the camera, and then he spoke direct to camera to do his like final monologue to the devil, and then it like abruptly cut to the next scene where we realize that he's passed away. And I don't know, it might just be me. Something about that moment, it was like maybe my least favorite part. I think maybe just because it felt like all of a sudden it became that sort of like magical realism, but all the rest of it had felt so realistic that it only popping up in that one bit, it just threw me off a little bit. And I would maybe feel differently if I could watch it again. Like, I don't know exactly what it was that didn't feel quite right, but I think that was it. Just felt like it kind of came out of nowhere. But I was interested, and I intend to go look at the script and read that chunk, because I was just interested in like, what is the stage direction there? And maybe it's exactly what they did. But I just wonder about how to interpret what was written there, and if maybe there was something that might have felt a little bit more like it fit for me in a filmic adaptation of this. I think on stage that would make a lot of sense, but maybe on film I don't know. And I don't know what I would do differently.
Right.
But yeah, that was just one little question mark I had, was just that little spot. So anyway, but that's the part that made me want to go, okay, I want to go read it and see what it says.
Right. Okay. Love that. I mean, for me, so the way I actually came to this play was through Billy Crystal, of all people. So if you don't know, he has a one-man show that he does, which is a beautiful piece. It actually was filmed for HBO, so you actually can watch his one-man show called 500 Sundays. And it's all about the fact that his dad, Billy Crystal's dad, dies when he's young, like in high school, basically. So he calculated that in his lifetime, he had about 500 Sundays with his dad. And so one of the things he talks about is early on in his theater career, obviously he's a young stand-up. He doesn't have a lot of money, and he ends up getting tickets to going to see the original Fences in the 80s, starring James Earl Jones. And he gets so excited because he gets to be in like front row seating. And he's like, how did I get this seating? And, he goes, the play is a little long. It's a little wordy, he goes, I'm a young dad. I got my 2 young daughters at home. I'm tired. And I start to kind of do a bit of a head rubberneck nod. And then James Earl Jones gets up and he goes, it's the scene where he starts talking about Babe Ruth. And he goes, and then of course he does the impersonation, but it's Babe Ruth. And just the spit flies. And apparently James Earl Jones was very wet in his performance. And so apparently this was an inside thing known on Broadway that this was a very wet performance that he would get. So people would actively not sit in the first few rows because of the spittle that would fly. And Billy Crystal, being just a kind of a young stand-up with a young family, did not know this. And so he ends up just getting spat on all night. And he goes, it was one of the greatest theatrical experiences of my life. I had Darth Vader and the voice of CNN spitting all over me, giving this whirlwind performance. And he loved it. So that's how I first heard about this play, Fences. And I always remembered that. So then that inspired me to read the play, which I did. And then I also did a fast read of it again when I prepping for this. So it's such an amazing play. Once again, August Wilson is one of those beautiful writers who is just so incredible with what he does. And I was just scrolling through Soulpepper, Shaw, and Stratford to see had they ever programmed this play, and none of them had. They've done other Shaw Festival's done other August Wilson plays. Soulpepper's done other August Wilson plays, but they have never done Fences. And I was like, what?
Why?
How have they never done Fences? Like, this would be a perfect play to do at any of these establishments. Like, Grand Theater's done Fences. They did that a few years ago because I saw that, or I didn't see it personally, but I saw it advertised. But as from all the research I've been able to do so far, I cannot find that either Shaw, Soulpepper, or Stratford have done Fences. And I'm like, either that's a rights thing with August Wilson's estate, I don't know, or they just have never staged his work, that particular play. But I'm like, this would be perfect for them to do. So they really should do that 100%. And I will say this was a great adaptation for film. I mean, I spoke about it in my general thoughts about how August Wilson was very restrained in his adaptation. He didn't let the film medium run away with the story. He still kept it very consolidated to him and his just way of going about telling the story, and I really appreciated that. So I'll just say that this is a beautiful film adaptation. It's solid. Read the play, go see the play if you can, because it's wonderful and it deserves to be produced more. Like the fact that I was just looking at the history of this play. They did the original production back in 1987, and then it was revived in 2010. That's a long time for a play to not be revived on Broadway. Like, this deserves more love and attention. This is a beautiful story, a tragic story. And I get maybe that's why people are a little bit hesitant to do it. It's just because it's a heavy play, but it's like, this isn't a big cast. It's not a big set. Like, very easy to kind of build a one house set and kind of work with it. And, we've done enough Arthur Miller's All My Sons and to last us a while. Like, maybe let's swap out All My Sons and do another Americana house play. And we could
or even Death of a Salesman. Like,
right?
Yeah. Oh, Jesus.
Get Fences in there instead.
Yeah. And I'm surprised even Obsidian Theater in Toronto has never even done a production of it.
See?
That's crazy to me. Maybe I
right?
submit to direct it or something, because it's
you should. You absolutely should.
After seeing that no one has done it,
right? Come on.
How many other heavy plays or even musicals, talking of Les Mis at the beginning, have we remounted and rewatched and redone and will do till the end of time?
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's do it.
Let's do Fences. Come on. Tanisha, I'll be there in the front row to see your directing of this play.
Whoever I cast will be like James Earl Jones, and we'll make it wet
Yeah.
What an honor to be spit on by James Earl
Jones. Darth
My-
Vader himself spitting all over you.
My text
Requesting
actually-
moist speaker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My text actually comes from one of my textbooks from
Yes.
uni, and I have pictures if you guys would like to see
Ooh, yes.
the original production.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
There
that's
he
cool.
is.
James.
Cool.
Yeah.
So rereading this was a treat because I was like, oh my god, yes.
Yeah.
Look at James Earl Jones.
James Earl Jones. Babe Ruth. Love that. Love that. Like, just so good. And yeah, in fact, no, not even Obsidian has done it. Wow.
Not even Obsidian. I know.
That's
I
mad.
know. So,
That's-
recommenders grant. Hello, I would like to.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
But maybe
Tanisha,
there's
all
a
the
right
way.
issue. Well, I'll let you know. I will let
Yeah.
you know.
Let us know. Keep us posted. Keep us posted. But speaking of James Earl Jones and Troy and Denzel, let's get into this figure of a human being because he's incredibly complex, balancing questionable actions with a sympathetic backstory. Do you feel that you were able to empathize with, understand, or condone his behavior? Do you agree with Rose's self-assessment that she was partially to blame for allowing Troy's need to consume her own? Andrew, what are your thoughts? Do you ever want to play Troy in a production one day?
I don't think I can, but thank you. Would I want to play a character like Troy? Yes, absolutely, because there's so much to chew on. And it's so interesting of a character because at any point in a play like this, you can see how an audience might empathize or might sympathize with a character and then completely turn around and go, no, I can't, I don't like you. Because while I may be able to understand where you come from, which is definitely the case with Troy, I can't justify the action that you are currently taking and how stubborn you are with being when everyone around you is trying to help you out. And you're turning around and while you may think you're doing something right, you're not. So that's essentially my answer with Troy. Overall, I could pick several points where I go, I can see where that stemmed from, and I'm sorry that happened, but also what the hell are you doing? And I think that was just kind of how I felt through all of the movie, was kind of like, this is a likable guy doing things that I do not like. So for that reason, I think I can say that I sympathize, but I'm not sure I empathize in that particular case. Because sorry.
Is Rose partially to blame for this?
I can't say that she is. I think Troy, as I think one of us has said, he kind of has a magnetic personality, and for that reason you can kind of be drawn in. He has people around him that are drawn in by this magnetism, but there is sometimes just a line that you don't see until later. So do I agree? Not really. He's just a magnetic guy, and it's hard to sometimes see that, like, you know, a magnetic person or someone that you love is doing something wrong. So I can't really agree with that, but I can understand again where that comes from in Rose's mind. And it's one of the heartbreaking things about that final monologue, and one of the reasons why I think it's such a lovable moment, in the sense that, like, you have to really appreciate Viola Davis's the vulnerability, as you had said, Tanisha, of her performance. So yeah.
Sarah?
Yeah, I really hated him. Yes, I think, Andrew, you said that you keep finding moments where you go, oh yeah, I see where that's coming from, and I do feel bad. Like, that was part of the brilliance of the writing and of the performance, that you did keep kind of going, oh, but there's that, like, and kind of hoping it feels constantly like he might figure out the right thing to do. So you're kind of, especially I think that the one part that did kind of make me feel empathetic was the monologue about his experience with his own father. Because, you know, like, obviously there was an abusive relationship with his own father, and generational trauma like that is cyclical, right? And if that's his experience of fatherhood, it is harder. It's like he's working against that in how to be a father. Like he doesn't have that example of how to, like he's working against it, but often that those things are cyclical in families, right? So I do feel bad in that case because obviously he went through a lot. But I truthfully found it very hard to empathize with him because it's because of what Rose says in that monologue when she says, well, what about me, Troy? Like, wasn't I right there with you? Don't you think I'd like to have some time for myself, or I might like to feel happy? And I was like, yeah, that's the problem. Everyone in your life has challenges. Like your wife is living the same life as you. She has the same struggles and she's not cheating on you. So it kind of was like, it just felt like some male privilege, you know, like it just felt like, and this is why, because he doesn't change the behavior. Like at first, what I thought was going to happen was that he admitted to her what he had done, and then he wasn't going to do it anymore. That I could have empathized with, because I could have been like you were unhappy, you made a mistake and you're trying to fix it. That I get. But the fact that his response was like, well, yeah, I think I'm just going to keep cheating on you because I deserve to feel happy. I was like, what? I was like, that is where it just ended for me. Because I was like, now you just think you're entitled to do whatever's going to make you happy at the expense of everyone else, even though your wife is also struggling and she doesn't get to just do whatever she wants. So that was just hard for me to. And then he gets the other poor woman pregnant, and then she dies in childbirth alone because he's at home with his wife. Like, just the casualties of this man, like, just keep racking up because of his selfish choices. So it just became harder and harder to empathize with him as we went. And I agree. I see where Rose is thinking, the character is thinking with the self-assessment of like, was she partly to blame for allowing his needs to kind of overtake her own? But I don't really think so, because I don't think in that time, like how many options did she have? She's a woman of color in this particular time. Her options were limited. Like she actually says something to Corey at the end when she's talking about looking back at her life. And she says something like, I married your father. Like I knew he could give me the kind of life I wanted. And I was like, yeah, I think if she had left him, like what would that life maybe have looked like? She didn't necessarily have all the options available to her. Maybe that would have been fine, or maybe that would have been really challenging as well in different ways. I don't know that she had just all the freedom to do anything to pursue her own needs. And that's the sad thing. Yeah. So I don't really think that she's to blame, even if she had made some different choices. So anyway, yeah.
Tanisha? Loaded question here. There's so much to unpack.
There's a lot to unpack. It's interesting because I can definitely empathize and like sympathize for Troy's character because of, like, we were talking about the generational trauma that has not only just generational trauma, but the environmental like shaping that has occurred with this character to leave him the way that he is. And on top of that, if we're talking about change in behavior, how is he going to change? The only way that like people of color, especially Black people, have been able to overcome generational trauma that has shaped us for so long is through like resources, like therapy, community, and like being able to recognize that vulnerability has not been afforded to us for so long because we've always like, it's just not safe. And vulnerability is what actually like gives you the power to do this self-reflection, to break down this generational trauma and these behaviors that will keep occurring over and over, like until you're able to stop the cycle. So it's hard to like read this play and see this movie and be like, oh, and just think like, oh, well, he could have done better. Like for me, especially, like it's hard to be like, oh, well, like there's moments where I'm mad at him 100%. and think he could have made better choices. But I'm always conflicted because I'm like, well, like how can he make better choices if he does not know better? He doesn't know better, so he can't do better. And it's so interesting, this question of Rose's self-assessment, because she believes that she's partially to blame because like if you look at who a woman chooses to be with her partner, it's a direct reflection of like how much she loves herself. But also, like you're saying, Sarah, how much of the times is it in, like how much is it environmental? Like, does she have much other choice? Even in the play, she talks about like, well, what other kind of man would I have been with? Like, her other option is someone who's abusive physically, or someone who will be worse and still cheat on her. So picking Troy as a person to be with for the rest of her life, she knew that it would kind of, stifle her own like choice, like life, like it would consume the choices that she wanted to make for her life. He's so magnetic, like you said, Alex, that it is not going to be about her in her own life. But she doesn't really have much other choice. So like I agree and I disagree that she's partially to blame. It's because it's complex, like maybe she is, but at the same time, like maybe they are both like they're both not all to blame for the way that they are. And being at that age too that they're not at an age where they can just like up and change in a day, in a night. Like that is, they are so stuck in their ways, and they don't know that like you can't change. Like that's just not an option. So it's such a like complex story, and this relationship to family, like the family that shapes you, along with the environment that shapes you.
Yeah.
This is a good question though. There was a lot of unpack. For me, I just feel bad. It makes me just feel bad.
Yeah.
For both characters. It's like one of those where I'm like, oh, rough.
Yeah. If I can jump on, piggyback on that one, it's certainly just like a testament to like the writing and the acting of like, these are people and people are complicated. So it's, I guess it's hard to distill, even though we've kind of attempted to, but it's hard to distill something into a definite answer because there's so many things. But that's kind of the great thing about this script, both as a play and as a film, is that these are people. So it's hard to come up with a definitive answer. Again, even though we've tried, and I kind of also tried or did.
That's the beauty of art. That is the beauty of art, is that we make these complex characters and then try to distill them and discuss them. But it's like at the end of the day, why it's so good, why this play is so good, why this adaptation of it by Denzel Washington is so good, is because we get this little slice of real people living their real lives, and it's complex, and it is messy, and it is just so human.
And it's why it will always be relevant.
Yeah.
I feel like that's why we can keep watching this and like still connect with it, even though it's set in a past time. Like this is humanity. Like we are messy and we make mistakes and we're complicated, and that is always going to be true no matter the era.
Yeah, we are always reflections of our parents and them of their parents, and the cycle will never stop because we are human. That is the beauty of this play.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, Troy is such a gray human being through and through, because you've all said it. I mean, on one hand, he has this very tragic backstory of abuse that he is fighting with all the time and actively working himself through in like whatever way he can. He also is dealing with, this is the 1950s in America, race relations, like this is a major thing. I mean, the fact that his whole subplot is, him fighting with the union to be a driver of a garbage truck, because he points out, the it's always the white drivers who get to drive, even though he's been there just as long. When's it his turn? And the fact they talk about the baseball leagues, the fact that what's the name of the baseball player that they talk about? Not Babe Ruth.
Right.
Not is it
Hey,
Mickey
Gibson,
Mantle? Hmm?
something Joe Gibson or something like that.
Yeah. It's like the first time like a black baseball player like is in the major leagues and is able to, and he goes, well, that's before my time, didn't have that growing up. So like all these walls that Troy has to hit repeatedly in his life, or that literally do fence him in and kind of pen him into, you know, informing who he is. Now, mind you, that does not give me permission to condone his behavior because I do not in any way, shape, or form condone adultery or, abuse that he subjects Rose and the family to. But as Andrew says, I can sympathize with him and understand there are a lot of roadblocks that even still today in the world men are dealing with, dealing with generational trauma, the whole concept of gender roles and what comes with that, you know, all that type of stuff, the lack of community and family support is major. Like there's a lot of stuff here. I mean, I count myself very thankful I had a very active dad and a very active male surroundings, good, good male role figures around me who, who I was able to get a lot of good influences from. But that's hard to find. Growing up now, like I'm 30 years old and seeing people around me who I go, they're like you can tell when like there are things that you should know. Cheating is bad. You know, like talk things out, communicate your problems. Don't just shut in on yourself. You have to be willing to have those adult conversations about life. And that's not an easy thing. Like people think it's easy. It's like, no, you need a lot of X factors that go into that to making you a whole person who can handle that. And that's something that today we're still working our way through. So yeah, I mean, once again, Troy's actions are inexcusable. The fact that, I think it was Sarah, you brought up the fact that I totally gapped. I totally didn't remember the whole thing with Alberta that she dies in a hospital alone. He's not there. Like I talk about horrible. The fact that this man, impregnates this young girl and then leaves her to die. And God bless Rose for taking that child in and mothering that child and realizing that no, this girl needs a mother figure in her life and being willing to take that on when she didn't have to. She could have easily been not my problem, let the state figure it out because this child's not coming home with you, you know. I mean, she's a woman in her 50s at the very least, now taking on a newborn child. You know, that's a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of extra costs to take on in an already very tight household financially. So, and then of course you have Rose's self-assessment. I go, no, she's not to blame in the sense of she created Troy's actions. She's a woman who's boxed in her own right as a woman of color in the 1950s, where women did not have the agency they have today. You know, we were just coming off World War II, where women were now being forced back into the home again because the men came home and wanted their jobs back and wanted their control back that they had ceded to the women while they were away. So she's someone she's someone who, what choice does she have? So of course she's going to kind of be stuck in that societal relationship where divorce wasn't condoned, you know, like, what are you gonna do? Her hand, she has really both hands tied behind her back, and what choice did she have? And of course, Troy being a very imposing figure in this family is going to suck up the oxygen in the room, as Andrew said. Or Tanisha, I can't remember, one of you said about how he just sucks up the space. You just can't get away from him. Mm-hmm. He is there. I mean, the fact that he even designed the backyard to be so small enough that he's always in that space. He just fills that backyard that it's like, you can't beat him. And of course, the fact you have, Denzel and James Earl Jones, who are both physically imposing men in their own right, taking on this role, it just informs who this person is, that there's no way to escape them. You are penned in with these damaged human beings, and there's no way around it. So Rose is not to blame. So I disagree with herself, but I understand where she's coming from in the sense of she didn't have any options really. She was kind of stuck where she was. And then yeah, with Troy, I have sympathy, but I don't empathize or condone, but I also understand that there are a lot of other limitations that have gone into feeding into what is creating this human being. So once again, August Wilson, brilliant writing with this very gray characters that are not black and white. They are people who have a lot of layers to them and create a lot of struggles that as a actor I'm sure would be a lot of fun to play in that sandbox and really excavate what goes on in there. So, yeah. All right, last question of the night. Let's get into it. And it's sports and music both reoccur as powerful motifs throughout the play and the film. How do you interpret the significance of these elements to the piece? Feel free to discuss both music and sports or either one individually. As Ryan, being the wonderful T that he is, gave that wonderful caveat at the end there. So thank you, Ryan. So Tanisha, I'll let you lead this one off because you had some thoughts that you wanted to lead us with.
Yeah, there were some things that I was just kind of jotting down as I was watching it after reading it and being like, oh, this is interesting. And after, I'm also coming off of watching The Holdovers where Divine says something amazing. She said, like, you can't even dream a full dream, can you? Yeah. And then watching this today, I was like, oh, I love the way you distilled that because it's becoming so familiar with Troy's character in this because the way he fences in his family, pun intended, because the way that he does not want his son to be involved with sports, but then will use sports metaphors to give him advice in life. You got to take the crooked with the straights, and you don't want to strike out. Like, I will use sports as a metaphor, but like, it's not actually allowed to play a big part in your life. You're not allowed. You're not allowed to dream a full dream because I wasn't, because I failed. And not because he didn't like fail because he is bad at sports or like didn't pursue his dream fully. Like, I think there was a lot of things that he had going against him, being Black being one of them, right? Being in a poor time, like being one of them or another one of them. I think that there's still an element of feeling like a failure, but at the same time, feeling like a martyr. Like, oh, I was not allowed to dream a full dream and it wasn't even all my fault. So they're going to do the same thing to you. Like, I'm going to stop you from thinking that you can escape this life because at the end of the day, the white people aren't going to let you have it. He says that to his son, like, they are not going to allow you to be successful with this football thing. So like, I'm going to stop your dreams right here and now. It's better that the disappointment comes from me than from them. It's better the hurt comes from me. It's better that I fence you in rather than them because I have felt that pain. So he is using his like failures and shortcomings and his martyrdom to fence him in. And he's, I think it's just really interesting the parallel that they use sports metaphors all throughout it. I didn't really have a ton on the music, but I did think it was interesting how he can't control what his older son Lion does because he is older. He doesn't condone his life, like him going into music as a career, but he can't really control it. He can't really keep him as fenced in as possible. He can like, try his best to mess with him, like give him the whole runaround. I don't want to give you $10 until Rose has to give it up. He can like make it uncomfortable, but at the end of the day, he cannot control his older son. So he's like, okay, let me at least try my best with Corey, and does a great job of keeping him fenced in. And I think that was pretty much all I had. I just think it was interesting. He says something like, I ain't got nothing else to give. I don't have a pot to piss in. And it's like the idea of like, you have to work twice as hard being a Black person. So using that to, and the environment also, like, is the abuse that he suffered through being poor and having to use his brother's like medical money to scrape away in this life, just to like use that as a point to be like, no, like I have struck out, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And so like there are no home runs. You're not gonna get the ball outside the fence. I don't know. I just thought it was so interesting. The life metaphors with the sports metaphors, and how sports was something that he really used to shape his view on the world. And so because his view of the world is so negative and everything that's happened to him, he's like, no, this isn't for you. You're not allowed.
Right. Love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Sarah?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And it was sort of similar to, it's both the sports and the music really struck me as sort of like with this theme of the American dream that we see in so much. And in this case, sort of a failed American dream. Like both the music and the sports are things that these characters want and make them hopeful for, but maybe aren't really realistic given the situation that they're living in. But it's like something that they are reaching for that is more than the reality of their lives. And this idea of like trying to achieve this dream is what's driving sort of the younger characters. And then the idea of how this dream can let you down and was not achieved for Troy is like drives so much of what he does, both in his own life and why he's unhappy, but also, as Tanisha is saying, is why he guides his son the way he does. And it was interesting to me with Lion's character as well, that like he is very hopeful through most of the film and is pursuing his jazz career. But we see him later in life after his father's death, and he's sort of become a little disillusioned about that dream even. And he talks a little bit about that. So we kind of see that recurring theme, like the dream failing or like letting you down kind of recurring with the next generation as well. It's kind of hinted at the end. Yeah.
Andrew?
Okay, so the audience at home is going to get an insight onto what Andrew looks when he doesn't have an answer for something, but is kind of ripping off of everyone who spoke before him. I'm just gonna say that right now.
All right. I'm glad you're owning it.
Yes, I'm gonna own it. I mean, there was it was very blatant, the use of kind of the sports throughout the film. I really enjoyed kind of like taking the crookeds with the straights. That I really liked. It's interesting. I think Tanisha, you had said something about living a full dream, and Sarah, you had said about. It's been a few weeks since I watched it. Leon or Lions? I don't remember.
Lions.
Because I have. Okay.
I think so. Right?
I don't know.
Lions. Lyons.
Lions?
Yeah,
okay.
so Lions.
Okay, because I have a friend that's Leon who spells it like that. So I was like, oh no, I'm confused now. Yeah, so I would just double check it. Lion, thank you. So it's interesting because I'm realizing now there's an interesting difference between Lion's and Corey's kind of motivations in terms of like those dreams, whereas like Lion's is like the dream is music, where I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, for Corey, it's kind of like a means to an end. It's like to get education, whereas like that's not the dream itself. It's I theorize that because again, it kind of called back to the monologue that Russell Hornsby gave about kind of like why he gets up in the morning, and that kind of like I'm doing I'm doing all I can to live the dream that I want to live, whereas that's something that doesn't really happen for Troy. Troy is kind of existing, and he's even kind of discouraging both of his sons of living their dreams. So like that kind of idea of like music and sports being kind of like reasons to live, and how kind of both Troy's sons interact with that, and then how he himself interacts with that. Do I have any other kind of grasping at straws analysis? I don't think I do. We're gonna stick with that.
Very good answers, Andrew. You pulled it through. Well done. I think for me, what stood out with the choices of sports and music is you have sports that are represented here. You have football and baseball that are supposed to be team sports, but the way they're depicted in this is very individualistic. Corey is very focused on his job on the team, his scholarship, you know, very single-minded. And it's one of those things of football has one of those things where you have a lot of linebackers, people who, are gonna hit each other, but really it comes down to the quarterback and the receiver who make the play to catch the ball and then get it into the end zone. And so it's very individualistic. And then you have baseball, which once again, it's a team, but at the same time, the team that's batting is individualistic. It lives or dies by your choices at bat, to swing, to strike out, to get the ball, whatever. And so the fact that you have that on one side of things, but then on the other side, you have music, which is very team oriented. Like music only works when all the instruments come together in the band. So I just thought that was a very interesting thing of you have Troy who actively avoids the club and the music his son plays and, is a little bit awkwarded out by Gabe's horn playing. And he's just not there with the team thing. He's an individualized human being. He's not team. It's his way. It's his path. And as teacher said, it's him breaking Corey, not the world that's going to break Corey. It's him. He's the quarterback. He is the star hitter on the baseball team. It's him. It's his choice. It's arrow. It's hard. It's hitting. It's physical versus music, which, it's jazz. Like Lion says he plays at the jazz club. Jazz is all about improv and being loose and be able to go with the flow of life. And that's not Troy at all. So I just think the choice there that he's just not able to connect with his eldest son and is not able to, really, I mean, he keeps saying the line about, take the curves along with the straights, but I don't know if he takes the curves very well. He's very strike focused of, Corey, you're going to go my path and my way, and it's going to be this way. When Corey goes, no, I don't want that. And the same thing with Lions. Lions is not about taking the strike. He will take the curve of being unreliable in that world and, taking the risk of that, I thought that's a very interesting motif of that, of sports versus music. And Andrew, I see you thinking over there. Did I spark something in you?
Maybe. It's interesting to say it's a team sport, and it's that kind of like everyone's relying on the other person, even even though they're kind of looking at it from an individualistic point of view. It's like Lions has the support of people in his band, even though he resorts to some maybe not wise shady stuff. Thank you. That's a great term. Shady stuff. But in the Maxon household, people don't have rather Troy doesn't have everyone else's back, and for that reason everything else fails, which is kind of what happens in sports. Even though you can have that star pitcher or you have that star hitter, if everyone else isn't pulling the weight on behalf of everybody else, everything kind of falls apart at the wayside. That's interesting. I don't know. Again, a panicked thought from Andrew Pawarroo.
Heads. There we go. All right. And that is our last question of the night, everyone. Yay us. Woohoo. Well done. Before we go, though, we will give our sign-offs. Make sure everybody knows where to find and follow us and where we can see Tanisha's upcoming production offenses she will direct. Yes. So there we go. There we go. And Tanisha, since you are our most wonderfully returning person to the panel since you haven't been on so long, give us your plugs first, because we want to make sure people can find and follow you.
Okay. So first of all, I'll plug my Instagram. It's Tanisha Sinclair, as you see my name up on the screen on Instagram. And you will see on my page that you can find my media company's page, Reclamation Media. I have a media company where it's all about reclaiming a spotlight and showing diversity of not only cast, but form of art. And that way we can, do film film, we can do theater, we can do all different types of media. So you can follow us there, see any of our productions. You can see some past shots from the last show I did, Hair Care. And hopefully, yeah, I can get my hands on the rest of this script and get to do it with Obsidian or one of the other theater companies here in Toronto, because no one else has done it.
Yeah.
So
keep your eyes peeled.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Sarah, where can people follow you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram as well. I'm actually Hime.Sarah on Instagram. And I'm also going to put it in a little plug that you can catch me in a series called Pink is In, that in Canada, it's available on Bell 5 TV now, but it's soon to come to Tubi as well. But it's already available on Tubi and Amazon Prime in the States and multiple other countries internationally as well. So I'm always plugging that. It's a comedy about a women's prison. So it's very fun and very unlike Fences, which we were just talking about.
Love that. Love that. Andrew?
As always, anything I do, you can see me do it or plug it on my Instagram at andrew.s.Pawarroo.
Love that. Love that. And now Andrew sail back to Denmark.
Yeah, just on a ship with a letter.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And Tanisha, I will say, just doing a quick Google search of the rights for Fences, it is $130 per performance.
That's nothing.
I'll
get that
nothing
done this year. Look out, Fences, directed by me.
Love it. Do it, Tanisha.
Hell
do
yes.
it. We'll be there.
Okay.
Absolutely. Love it. All right. And you can follow me at Mackenzie Horner on all social media platforms. You can check out my musical theater antics over at Before the Downbeat, a musical podcast. Don't know when this episode's coming out. So I will just say by the time you're seeing the season 5, we'll probably most likely be wrapped. Not sure. If not, season 5 is still ongoing. And we'll be heading into season 6 almost right away as well. So there you go on that. We just released our episodes on The Color Purple, Kiss of the Spider Woman, Candide. We're doing Cinderella this week. So we talk all about Whitney's wonderful 1997 interpretation of that musical. So check that one on out. So yeah, there's all types of good stuff there. All right. But for now, everybody, stay healthy, stay safe, and we will see you all in our next episode of The Cup. Thank you, and see you soon.